I'm here with Anna Kronschnabl, the CEO and producer of Fluffylogic. Anna, you are one of the rare women in a management and high up position in the games industry. How do you find it, given that it is a very male-dominated environment?
Well, it is very male-dominated. That is what I find it. It's a challenging position to be in, and I think maybe that it's partly historical. I think that that's just the way that things have developed slowly over time. I did work in a computer science and engineering department for a good few years, and I think that prepared me for working in the computer games industry quite well. And to a certain extent I'm quite comfortable working in a quite male environment, and I have traditionally. I come from a business that I ran previously which was quite male-centred as well, and I don't have a problem with it. But I think it certainly does create a different atmosphere, and I think women and men bring different things to the board when dealing in business, and I think it's probably not recognised terribly well at the moment. I think the fact that there are so few women in computer games, and I think there's so few women, there are more women in kind of admin and support and marketing and things like that, but far less women in the kind of technical development kind of side. And I think it's a shame really, because I think it has a knock-on effect on the types of games that are played. I know that women play games. I love playing games. I have lots of friends who love playing games. I think women play slightly different games, and to a certain extent I think people are missing a trick or two in terms of what they're making for their audiences at the moment. However, most people in computer games, and certainly a lot of people making the decisions, I think are men at the moment.
And what are the sort of main challenges that you've come up against, being a woman and having to talk both to the people who work for you and also the people who you're trying to sell to?
I think initially, on a kind of personal level, certainly a lot of people who are used to working in very male environments, programmers, and to a certain extent some of the artists as well, I think they've worked with men most of their lives and they generally feel comfortable with men. And so just that one simple fact really probably does have an effect. I mean, as it is, like I said, I'm quite used to it, and I'm quite good at kind of getting past those kinds of things and trying to make people feel at home. I don't dress in a girly manner. I can do martial arts. I like sci-fi. So all of those things help, obviously, but I think there's just differences really, and I think it's going to take a while. Still, my background, like I said, I worked in a computer science department for a while, and engineering, and it did give me an understanding of sort of a lot of this kind of with computing and stuff really, and I think that was really helpful, and people's interest in that area as well. I think it also just, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a boys' network.
Have you found it hard to recruit people into your company? Women into your company?
I found it hard to recruit women, certainly. Not for the job of office manager, because we had about 50 applicants. But for the job of programmer, we found it really hard. We have positively, actively searched for female programmers and artists, and we do have one female artist. But we've tried very hard to find female programmers, and one of the problems is, I think, that to a certain extent it's very helpful to have a background in computer games, and so that's going to be hard for a lot of women at the moment. And also, when I worked in the engineering department, one of my jobs as a researcher was to look at why there weren't so many people wanting to go into mathematics and engineering, and I think that very fact is one of the things that kind of goes along the line and means that there are fewer women in programming in computer games, because certainly these areas are areas that are really good foundations for for this particular kind of like discipline. I think if people aren't interested in the first place in maths and engineering disciplines, then their likelihood to go into computer games programming, which can be quite hardcore, it's just not so likely to happen. You find that women are more interested in multimedia, and they do content and programming a little bit, but more lighter versions, and really the people we employ are hardcore programmers.
And what do you think, I mean, how do you think we're able to get more women into the games industry? What's the way forward from here to sort of raise the profile of the industry and bring more women into the teams?
Well, I think, a few years ago I went to E3 and was really struck by how many people were talking about the demographics of the games market and how it was changing from hardcore traditional players from the 17 to 25-year-old blokes or whatever, and how they were reaching out to other markets, and they had fishing games for older men and all these things. And certainly some of this is happening, but actually I think it's still people think in niches still. They still think very much about, well, I'll make a kind of this very specific game, a fishing game for the 70-year-old male market or something like that. I think that there needs to be more games for women, but I actually think more games should not be aimed at the young male market, because I think there's an awful lot of young girls out there and a lot of, you know, older women, young, all of these other people, lots of markets who actually would be quite happy to play variations of these different games. But no matter, we have done quite a lot of kind of game development for various publishers, and even though they say that they're interested, actually really what they really want is the male hero, and they kind of will allow a sidekick female hero if she's wearing a short skirt or, you know, some of that. So I think until they start realising that women are not quite as constrained, and that can only happen, I guess, when more women get involved. It's a bit like the whole argument for women involved in Parliament, I guess.
And finally,
I'm not running for
what advice would you give to women wanting to enter the industry?
Think about why you love games. I mean, I think that wanting to be involved in the industry, it's a hard industry. Any creative industry is hard. I think you have to have a passion for it, and then you have to realise that it's actually really hard work. At the end of it, you will could produce some really fantastic, exciting, creative stuff. But you have to be quite focused, I think. The computer games industry generally, if you want a career, breaks down into design, production, programming and art, and really few designers, few producers, lots of programmers, lots of artists. So pick your area well. I think that would be one of my bits of advice. We have people who come to us who just really have lots of disciplines. They kind of are interested in lots of stuff. And my experience in most creative industries is that actually people like specialists who know what they're talking about. So I would say look at that carefully, think about that carefully.
Okay, Anna, thank you very much.
Thank you.